going to take you through how to load up your reference images. So let's get rid of all of the things in the scene. I don't need the camera. I don't need the light. I can always put those back in later if I want to do a render. I'm just going to keep this nice and simple for myself so that I'm only selecting the object that I need, which is the character. Yeah, so some interesting ideas to always remember. We're going to be looking at this from the left side, and we're going to be looking at this from the front often. And the way I'm doing this, if you look over here to where my keystrokes are being registered to the screen, if I use my middle mouse button to orbit the screen around, and then I hold Alt, then I can snap my view into these what are called isometric views. Out here, we're looking at this in perspective. And your character will be rendered in perspective or run around in the Unreal Engine in perspective. So we always have to look at our character from all of the different directions and, make sure that everything is looking good. Don't get comfortable just modeling in isometric side or front all the time, because when you come back to your perspective, stuff's going to look awkward and kind of weird, and you're going to have to always jump back into perspective and tweak. But we need those reference images to make sure that things are working. So let's get those in first. So I could use these guys up here where my mouse is now wiggling. I could push X to see the front. I could push Y to see the side, but I'm going to get comfortable with my keystrokes and hold down Alt and just snap in my front view. Shift A, image. I'm going to bring in a reference image that I copied off of that website. I saved the file. And loading it in from the side is going to guarantee that this thing is now facing the camera from that isometric view. If I happened to do the insertion of the image from perspective, reference, it's going to look at the camera. So when I orbit it around, I'm going to have to do some extra work that I don't want to do, but you can do it. I'm tapping the N key to bring my shelf out up here, and I could just change the rotations up here if I wanted to, but that's just extra work. So let's delete that. I'm going to go to the front view, Shift A, and I'm going to load in the reference. Once it's loaded, we can move it around and rotate it and put it onto the side as need be. Now, what's really important is that we make sure a few things, that the character is standing on the ground plane. In perspective, that's the only plane that we really see, is that grid out there with the green and the red on it. So from the front view, we're going to see the green line, which I believe is the y-axis. Let's G on Y. Yep. G and Y means I'm only going to move it on the y-axis. And GX, that's going to move it only on the x-axis. Okay, cool. So I know that the green is Y, and this is going to be our front view. Now, working with this image before, I've learned a few things about it. This artist was so meticulous in making sure that this line right down the center of the body does what it should, and that helps us to see, based on the Z line in Blender, this blue line here, we get to line it up with that, but we're having a hard time seeing that blue line right now. So if you highlight the object and then look over here onto the right-hand side, there's a bottom button down below for the image, and we can find the opacity setting here. I'm going to decrease this all the way down so it's barely visible. This is intended for tracing, so I just need this to be visible enough so that I can see where I'm going with my extrusions as I do my work. Now I'm going to get this to land right onto the green line. So I'm going to select the object, tap G, and then move it as best as I can to stand on the floor. Now, if I zoom in really, really close and look up and down the object, I have to note that this blue line goes right down this middle line. So if you're illustrating your own character, and you've photographed it with your phone or you've scanned it with a scanner, you can try to rotate it perfectly in a tool like Photoshop. I'm just gonna rotate it here because I can. But before I do that, I'm going to duplicate it because the side view is looking perfect on the floor. Over here, the boot is landing perfectly on the floor. Well, you know what? No, it's not. So I've got penetration over here where the tip of the boot is going underneath the ground, and I could move it up a little bit, but it looks like the illustrator curved the boot a little bit just to give it the illusion of perspective. And we know that if this was truly looking straight on the foot, that would be completely flat on that line. So I'm going to let it penetrate underneath a little bit. And then I'm going to highlight the object. I'm going to tap R and then rotate this as best as I can to try to get that line all the way up the character, splitting its face straight down to the floor. I'm looking at the boots, and both of them are penetrating the floor equally. So this is exactly what I need here. This is going to work awesome. So that's the front. Now I need to worry about the side. The fastest way I could copy paste, but I'm just going to hit Shift D and duplicate it. Click once, tap R and 90. Oops, escape. If you make a mistake, you can always just tap escape when you're using these keystrokes. One of the wonderful things about Blender. So R, Z, make sure you're rotating on the Z axis, 90, enter. Cool. And now I can look at it from this view. And we can be a little bit more loose about where we're putting the character. There isn't a line that dictates exactly where this character should go. But I do want to G, X, so it's only sliding on the X axis. I don't want it going up and down. And I'm going to do my best to try and put this blue line right down the middle of my character. And a good rule of thumb, GX, I'm going to try to just make sure it puts the line straight down the middle of the hips here. Yeah, that's going to be great. Now the cool part is about isometric is it doesn't matter how far away from the camera these objects are. So if I G, Y, oops, I can switch that to X. I can slip this back. I can put it back as far as I want. And as soon as I orbit around, even though it looks tiny in perspective, when I hit that isometric snap, it's going to be the right size that I need. And I can scroll into it. Middle mouse button, click and zoom, and it gets small again, but that's because it's in perspective and it's actually looking like it's farther away from the camera. So Alt, snap, it fills the frame. Awesome. This one, I'm going to G on Y and slide it back. So I have a lot of room right here at the origin of the world to start worrying about my character. Now in a lot of other tutorials, you'll see folks, they'll start their character with a cylinder. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, they might start up at the upper body and things like that. But I have, like I said earlier, I'm a pragmatist and I like to think about where I'm going to go at the end of this all. And I need my character to stand on the floor. So I like to start with the bottom of the foot and work my way up. It really doesn't matter where you start as long as you start somewhere and move your way up. And you're thinking the whole time about topology and you know, how many polygons that you have at your disposal to do your work, and the rule of fours. You know, we want to keep everything four-sided so that our edge loops work great. We got great topology, etc. But so, having said that, a lot of people when they're box modeling, they start with a mesh cube. It's fine, and it's not hard right now to just select it and GZ1, and that will put it on the floor, which is fine. You know, that's totally fine. You know, but we had to take an extra step there, when in theory we could have just, I'll delete this, we could have just Shift A, started with a plane, because once we hit Tab and we go inside the object and we have the plane selected and I press E, we can extrude it. And now we've got a box, right? So it's, if we start with a plane and our origin point is where it belongs, then it's going to sit right there on the floor. And then when we snap to the side view or the front view, we're going to see that that is perfectly on the floor. Now, box modeling, or let's call it planar modeling, sure, whatever. But yeah, we end up with a box anyway. So, having said that, it's common for people to get confused about what this little doohickey is here in the center of the screen. This is called the 3D cursor, and you can accidentally shift and right click and move it around. And when I started Blender, this thing used to frustrate me, coming in from tools like 3D Studio Max and Maya. It was like, I don't know what this thing does, but it's kind of neat because what it does is it defines where in three-dimensional space your new objects are going to get created. So if I built a cube up here, it's going to be center of mass around that cursor, that 3D cursor. So Shift A, and if I made a monkey over here, it's going to put it over here. It's a very powerful tool and it's super useful in advanced situations. I won't bring up right now. It's actually a wonderful thing to have once you know what it can do for you. Anyway, but you might accidentally put it out there in the middle of node land by accident, shift right clicking. If you want to return it back to the center here, you can do it a couple of ways. You can tap N, and under view, I think, location of the 3D cursor, you can reset it. You'll even see that it's rotated. That's not good. But there's a faster way to do it. I rarely use the shelf much anymore, unless I'm dialing in specific things around the objects, you know, specific location or rotation. If you happen to put it elsewhere with shift right clicking, just get into tapping Shift S. And Shift S allows you to quickly say cursor to world origin, if that's somewhere you want to put it. So there it is. Live now 0, 0, 0 rotation, and the location's also 0, 0, 0, giving us a good spot to start our modeling. So, common mistake people make, and I'll add in my first plane, is you want to move it, because this is going to be the bottom of the foot. So we G on Y, and we move it over. Now, what has happened is we've moved the object itself. And you'll see, if you look carefully, that there's this little orange dot right in the center of my object. Now that is the object's origin point. So if I rotate now, that will rotate around that orange dot. It's also its location. So if I look up under the item, you'll see that it's been moved over to 1.5 meters over to the positive Y. If you were to simply, I'll just undo that. If you were to simply instead hit the tab key, go inside the object, so now we're in edit mode, and we G on Y, we slide this over, and then we hit tab to go back to object mode, you'll notice that the origin point stays at 0, 0. Now we're going to be using the mirror modifier. So had we moved it over as an object, then we would have to use something called a null object to tell it what to mirror from. Now, the mirror modifier is just going to work. Click on the little wrench on the side, add modifier, generate mirror, and you'll notice that it just ends up working when we mirror it over the axis of Y. Now, if you happen to be looking at this from a different angle, you put your front as Y or your front as X. It's just a matter of choosing the right axis that you want to mirror on. So I'm currently mirroring over Y, and it's using the origin point of the object to do the mirroring. So that's that little orange dot there. Now, some things to know about the mirror modifier. We're going to turn on clipping. We'll come back to that in a second. We're going to leave merge turned on, because when we get up to the skirt area, to the belly of the character, we're going to notice that we're going to need to merge the vertices in and around the exterior of the asset as they meet up at the red line, as they meet up at X. we'll leave that for now. So if I hit tab and I go inside here, I can start doing the work that I need to do. Now, if I look at the front view, I can see that my plane is way, way over here. And I'm going to take a lot of time at the start to think about some of the dynamics of the model and where it's going. Eventually, I'm going to make a boot out of this, and then I'm going to extrude the leg right out of the boot. So I'm going to need some geometry to do that stuff. And one word of caution I'm going to give everybody is that if you were to just finish your model, like, don't worry about the shoelaces and don't worry about fingernails and don't worry about the bow, but just literally model up your character until you're finished with the head and you're thinking about nice edge loops and flow, which we'll talk about here. While you're going, then you just get the shape, the general shape down, and then you can see the silhouette of the object and see if it reads. Does it look like it's in proportion? Does it match the illustrations that you're trying to trace? And then you can go back in later and put in all the detail. So get the shape done and do that as low poly as you possibly can. And what's cool, if you follow the base really closely, you could actually then send it over and start sculpting on it if you wanted to. You can do all this other cool stuff. But starting with low poly is really helpful at the beginning, and then moving towards your goal, and then coming back in later to worry about, the complexity of the shape is really helpful. So another important thing is up here where my cursor is right now, and I'm going to mouse over it. It says toggle X-ray. If I don't toggle X-ray and I try to select this one vertice over here, I know that there's another one over here, and I could continuously jump back into perspective to try to grab this one, shift, grab that one, and then go back here and G on Y and slide it over. But it's going to be really time consuming and frustrating to constantly be hopping back out. Now, if I'm looking at it from the front and I attempt to grab that vert and knowing full well there's another one behind it, and I hit G, you'll see that the other one behind it did not get selected. All right, so what we got to do is turn on X-ray mode. It's up here. It's the 5th option from the top of this window. That way, when I click and drag my cursor with the select tool on, let me turn on my tools over here, and I'm using the select box right now. This thing can change quite often. I like to use select box a lot until I'm in tweak mode. So I just click and drag with the X-ray mode on, and now when I hit G, it'll move the 2 vertices. Anything that's in line with it, it can pick up because it's X-ray viewed through, and it can allow you to select things. But I want to slide it across the ground, so I'm going to start over here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to fill my screen and zoom in here. I'm going to worry about the insole. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to GY and slide it over to the edge of the foot. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. GY and slide it over here. And I can see that I've lined up to the best of my ability those 2 vertices, 4 vertices to the edge of that shoe. And I'm going to go and orbit around with my middle mouse button, hold Alt as I get to the side here and snap in that view. Now I'm looking at the red line, which is X, so I GX, and I'm going to slide this to the tip of the toe, and the same with the heel, GX. Now this takes some time to get started, but I know that that plane is on the floor. So whatever I model off of this right now, those verts are at 0 Z, so that it means that those are pinned to the floor. So when I get this character walking through 3D space, it's going to put its foot on the ground. And that's a really important idea to me. And every time I model anything, and I'm much more of a hard surface modeler, so if I'm doing a flower pot or something like that, I start here. I start on the floor and I move my way up. It's just easier. I build a tree, I start here, I model it up. It's just easier for my brain. Doesn't work for everybody, but it's the way I like to think. So we've got the front and the sides defined, and you'd be surprised, but we're ready to rock. Now, it's a little bit frustrating to see the front and the side the way it is. I like to see a little bit more of the depth of things. So there's nothing stopping you right now from hopping over to face mode. These buttons up here, verts and edges and face, you can get to by tapping the 1, 2, and 3 key. That'll take you into the different selection modes. That one's the one I want, is the face, and then I extrude it up. That's giving me a little bit of depth. Cool. Now, in X-ray mode, it can be a little bit frustrating if your background art is not set to like the opacity that we had before. I'm going to just go back out into object mode. And maybe because of the nature of X-ray mode, which I turn off and on, and I know the keystroke is Alt-Z. Alt-Z is your friend. Turn it off and on. In X-ray mode, sometimes the artwork in the background can be conflicted with the view that you're having. So from time to time, you might choose to select your tracing reference objects and just go over to the image and even decrease the opacity even more. We don't really need to see it a whole lot. We just need to see it enough. So I'm going to highlight that and maybe punch in 0.02 and make it really dim so that I can see this box. When I hit Alt-Z, it's nice and high contrast. Alt-Z, it's even in X-ray mode, it's really good. Now, there's a little lesser known thing about the blender that took me a long time to figure out. Hopefully I can remember how to do it. But up in here, where there's this little filter, you can turn on this guy here, which is the arrow, which means whether or not something is selectable. And it's kind of weird that it's not on by default, but right now I don't want these things to be selectable because I certainly don't want to move them. So I'm just going to turn off the selectability of these images. This guy over here, I'm also going to change the image opacity to 0.02 and turn off its selectability. Cool beans. Yeah. Zoom in there. Yeah, now we're ready to start modeling. But we don't have enough geometry on this. I'm going to hit Tab, get inside the object in edit mode. And I don't have enough geometry right now to start really thinking about modeling this. So your best friend is going to be the Edge Loop and Slide tool. So the shortcut for that is Control-R. And all you got to do is put your mouse over the edge that you want to put a new edge loop on. And why they call it slide, as soon as I click and hold my left mouse button, I can slide it to where I want it. Just super handy. If you press escape, it's always going to put it right in the center, and it's going to create the edge loop. This is not something that you can hit the escape key and get out of and not have it commit the new edge loop. So you have to hit Control-Z to get that to undo. Just to be mindful of that. The other cool thing about edge loop and slide is if I hit Control-R and mouse over and scroll my middle mouse wheel, I can add more segments, which is super cool. So I'm going to give myself enough geometry here. Click, click, click. And to deal with what's going to invariably be the foot that's going to get extruded, or the heel, and the leg that's going to come up from over here. And now I can start thinking about the shape of this boot from above. A cool trick, and I'm in X-ray mode, cool trick. And this kind of broke my brain a little bit at the start when I was learning to model. I'm going to tap 1 so that I'm in my vertices select mode. I could grab this right now and G move it. Notice it happens on the other side because we got the mirror modifier, which is cool. But I just want to shrink these two together. I want them to move to the same spot. You'll notice that I am in an isometric top view. That's kind of important when you're doing certain moves like this, because if I was just doing this willy-nilly in perspective space, I might think that I'm sliding that across the floor, but then I look at it, oh my gosh, I lifted it up. That's not what I wanted. So often you'll see me go to the top view, and as long as I'm at the top, it'll make sure that I can only slide this on X and Y and not Z. It'll never go up, okay? So G, I can move this around. I can start to think about the shape of a boot. Now, once again, now is not the time to get into specifics and worry about all the details. That'll all come with time, you know? Like, for example, you're gonna want to maybe in the future put a little indentation around here, which you can easily do by adding in some geometry down here. But I'm not going to think about the soles of the shoes right now. I really want to get this model well on its way, and then I'm going to come back in later to focus on all the little details. Now, the cool thing about the topology being the way it is right now, if I hit Control R, I can give myself another edge loop down the middle. Click, click twice to commit it to the middle. And now I can start thinking about maybe grabbing this one and G. I can move them together. If I wanted to move them exactly in the order I want, I could say on X, and then it would move only on the X axis. That's super handy. These guys here, I'm only able to do this because I'm in X-ray mode. And G on Y. Oops. Wiggle that around on Y, but if I'm not liking that I'm on Y, I can just tap X and change the direction. Right? And what I'm trying to do here is invent a shape that kind of looks circular. Like so, and like so. Now maybe there isn't enough geometry here to make the heel that I want, so Control R, and then put in another edge loop here. Now you're going to notice that that edge loop is starting to look really kind of janky. And that's because the edge loop and slide tool always averages out the middle of that edge that it's trying to cut across. So maybe I can just undo, and hopefully I can get back to a point where I get rid of that edge loop. Now, important thing to note about Blender is if you go under Edit Preferences, I hope I don't take too much time to find this because I don't do this very often. In your Blender file, under Preferences, System, here's the undo steps. And I think the maximum number is 256. So you can crank that right up. If you've got a good computer, crank that right up to 256 undo steps. And then Blender will start to remember that many undos. Cool. So Control R. Now I'm going to say, give me 2 edge loops here. Why am I doing this? Because I'm thinking about the back of the boot here. I'm going to want that to curve around and be nice and flat on the back of the heel. So I'm going to put in 2 edge loops here. From the top, I'm going to now, in my vert mode, I'm going to start shaping these 2. I'm holding Shift down to collect groups of verts. G on X, GX, and just slide it over here. Yeah, this guy over here. I might G and just do this a little bit freer as I'm just shaping this out like so. Yeah. And I can do the same thing for the toe. I can start moving this around. You see what's starting to happen here is I'm getting a rough estimation of what the shape of the boot is going to be. Yeah. I can put another edge loop around here. Control R, like so. And once more, I want to caution you that you don't want to put too many edge loops out early on. It can be dangerous, right? Now, what I was going to show you earlier, I forgot to say, is if we have an edge loop selected or vertices selected, you can use, in edit mode, you can use scale. I hit S, I can scale this out. Kind of cool, eh? You can do the same thing when you have tap 1, these verts and these verts selected. I can use scale. So S, I can scale them. Now it kind of looks like they're moving apart from each other, but if you think about it, they're scaling apart from one another. Problem is though, even though I'm looking at it from this perspective, if I hit scale, I undo, I click it, and then I look at it from the side, it's scaled it all on all of the different directions, X, Y, and Z. And that's not good. I want these to sit on the floor, and I don't want these necessarily to go up. So I learned another cool keystroke from a student, actually. I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could tell Blender to not go on a specific order? So scale on X and Y, but not Z. So U, Shift U, S, Shift Z. By holding down Shift and saying Z, it's saying not Z. So it'll do X and Y. So I'm using scale to do this move, which is kind of fun. Yeah. Could I be doing this a whole lot better? Sure, I could. This edge loop here, I can hold down the Alt key and click on that edge loop, and that'll scoot all the way around. And another cool shortcut key to note is Move, G, but you tap it twice, so GG, and then it'll slide along the existing geometry, which is really helpful. And that's true of everything. You can grab a vert and go GG, have it slide along the existing edges, which is super powerful. Yeah. So, just trying to rough out a shape here. I can come back in here later and worry about stuff, but I'm gonna shift these four verts, because there's two underneath both sides, so 4, and then not Z, so Shift Z, and then scale those together. I'm just getting a rough shape of what's invariably going to be a leg. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. Now I could have done all of this extrusion work earlier on, and then done the slice cuts and moved all the verts around, but I'm just messing around right now just to get sort of a rough shape of what I think the boot's going to be. Now the illustration doesn't give me a whole lot of detail, so I got to make up a lot of stuff in my mind about what's going on here with this boot. And I've got a lot of faces now on the top. That's not a big deal. I'm going to go over into face mode, tap the 3 key. I'm going to leave the view of X-ray, Alt Z, and I'm going to shift, click, 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 click. Now this is sometimes where people like to switch their selection mode over to circle. So select circle is kind of cool because it's like a paintbrush. Right? You can just click and hold your button down and just paint a selection across, which is neat. And then select box. Yeah. So I've got all those upper faces selected, and I'm going to hit the E key, and I'm going to extrude these up. Now extrude can be tricky. I'm going to show you a problem with extrude. A little bit too much detail maybe for the advanced users, but sorry. Sometimes, by accident, we hit the E key, and then we hit escape. We hit E again, we click. We hit E again, we click. What you can't see behind the scenes is that we've actually extruded those faces every time, and it's just piled a bunch of faces on top of one another. And I know that to be true because if I go back to X-ray mode, Alt Z, and I'm going to go to my verts tool, tap 1, and I select this one vertice? Nope, not one. And I turn on my statistics. And that's underneath these 2 circles that are overlapping. I'm going to turn on my stats. And over here, what do I see? I have 4 vertices selected. I accidentally extruded those faces on top of one another, and that can mess up everything. It ruins your day. Trust me. It's not good. So Blender knows this is going to happen, and this would happen to any modeling software. It can happen by accident. So the quick fix is to select all, hit the M key, merge, by distance. Okay. And what we're asking Blender to do is to try to find all the vertices that are a certain distance apart from one another and just merge them together. So all 4 of those are going to collapse on each other. And you'll notice if you click by distance, but the little tool will pop up in the bottom left. It's behind my head right now. And when I bring that up, it's actually got a number in there that's really, really, really tiny, 0.00001. Okay. So it's going to merge everything that's barely any distance at all away from one another. So just once more, M by distance, click. And now when I select that vert where there was a pile of 4 on top of one another, I can see over here in my statistics, there's only 1. So let me check this one. I'll check this. There's 1. So from time to time, it's our responsibility as modelers just to double check that we're making sure our models are clean. Sure. I'm going to leave X-ray mode now that I've made that point, and I'm just going to go back to face mode, tap 3. And, you know, I'd like to say that there's a right or wrong way to do this. There's not, right? I had mentioned earlier that we want to, you know, get this thing well underway before we start worrying about the minutia, the detail. So I'm actually going to leave it here. I'm going to leave it right like this, and I'm just going to say you, and you, which kind of looks like a circle. You're now a leg. Extrude. So yeah, that doesn't look like a leg. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all. And definitely go back to your reference objects to make sure that we're doing things. Ooh, ew, that's not right. Back to X-ray mode. Let's bring this up much, much higher. 1. I'm going to select all these. And now I'm going to be specific and move them straight up by hitting GZ. G on Z, and move them straight up on the Z axis to define the top of the boot. I'm going to swing around, look over here on the side view, and make sure that I'm pretty much on the top of the boot. I'm going to move this up even more. GZ, get that right on the top of the boot. Now all the shape in here, all that roundness that we'll add all that in later. Okay. Now there's an important keystroke to also know about. I'm going to highlight you. Oh, I'm in vert mode. So tap 3 to go to face mode. You. Whoops. The problem with X-ray mode is you can accidentally select stuff all the way through. So Alt Z. So you, and you. I'm going to now think about the interior of the boot. So I can tap I, which is inset. I slide. And now I'm insetting all those vertices in. And I can tap E, and I can extrude it down. I can tap I to inset in, and I can hit extrude to go up. You see what I've done there? I've created very quickly a boot. Yeah. I go back into X-ray mode here and start thinking about where does the leg really start on this illustration. So the boot actually goes all the way up to here. So I'm going to grab with 1 these verts, and I'm going to move them up. So GZ. So much faster than using these tools over here, by the way, when you know your shortcut keys. Yeah. And I've got the top of the boot defined. If I wanted to, I could S scale it. Nothing wrong with that. You might want to worry about that later. So I'm going to just hit escape. I'll worry about that later. I will start scaling and rotating stuff as I move up the leg, but I'm going to leave the boot for now because this is really more than enough geometry that I need right now to get going and move on, right? We'll do the same thing when we get up to the arms. Okay. So important things to note about modeling is that we have to, as I move these around like so, and align this up from the front view, and then I'm going to go over to the side, G, and to move this over like so. Now we want to get into the habit of really strong topology, which means that our edge loops flow around the shape in a natural manner. So we would assume that this should be rotated a little bit like this, because that would make that perpendicular to the leg. Yeah. But we got to be mindful of how the tools work. So with these faces selected, I'm going to extrude this up, and it will push in that Z order the faces now at the angle that we've rotated it. I'm going to come to this side. I'm going to G. I'm going to move these over. I'm doing all of this from ISO views. I'm not doing this in perspective. I'll tweak things later in perspective as I need to. So in and around any interesting moment like this, where we know that the object is going to have a knee that bends, we're going to need to have more geometry. Because think of every vertice as being a hinge, okay? So every one of those little points on your object, which is a vertex, is like a hinge, right? And the edges are kind of like the metal plates that you have on the hinges of your doors, and they're gonna hold the cage in place. So I'm gonna move this in like so, and I'm using this illustration's lovely little circles that they put in here, and I'm going to have to worry about this later, but I'm gonna just make the point now while I'm talking about it. Start shaping things maybe a little bit. Move this over, G. You gotta be careful, because it's like, well, why is the top of the boot moving, but the whole leg's not moving? Oh, right, because there's stuff inside of here. Right. So we gotta move all of this stuff with it as well. Or, we've got the power of edge loop and slide, right? So why don't I put what's called a supporting edge loop down inside the boot? And that's going to support this area down below. So if I hit Control R, I can put another edge loop on this and slide it. And I just put it barely inside of the boot, like so. Now, when I grab these verts here, and I move them around, there we go. It's behaving the way that I want. I can grab the top of the boot, including the new supporting edge loops, and move those out where they make more sense. These guys here, I can tap S and scale them to make more of a calf, G and move it, right? That's going to give me the curvature at the back of the leg that I want. Cool beans. You guys up here, tap S, I can scale that out to make it make more sense. Then, Control R, I can put a supporting edge loop in here, or scroll the wheel, a few. Now, why would I want so much geometry in here? Well, this is going to have to bend, right? This is a knee. So the knee is going to need a little bit more geometry in there to do its work. Is there a right or wrong answer about how many verts and edges you need in there? No. I'd like to say that there was exactly 72, but it's not the case. But that's going to allow that to do its bending, and yeah, it's going to do its deforms in there as we need them to. All right, so I'm going to carry on until I get up to the crotch area. So I'm going to highlight you guys, rotate, and since I'm on that view, I can rotate it and start pointing it in the right direction. These guys here, I might rotate them a little bit. I like to kind of average everything out while I'm going. Yep. Kind of getting into, good topology as we scooch along. Now, there's an interesting point. These faces up here kind of not really doing us any service anymore. These ones on the top. I mean, we're going to go all the way up to the head on this and close it off. So these guys up here, they don't even actually really help us much. So I'm going to take all of these. I'm going to hit X. I'm going to get rid of them. Delete them faces. Like, well, wait a minute. What are you going to extrude now? Huh? You can extrude anything. You can extrude a vert. Bet you didn't know that. One. Select this guy. I can extrude it. Woo! And it'll make an edge. Interesting. I can even take this right here and right click on it and subdivide it. Look at that. It puts a vert in the middle. G. Now this is terrible topology, so I'm going to undo. These guys right here might have two because I made a move. It says one vert. Just checking my statistics. But I can grab this edge loop, and because these are perfect quads, if I alt-click, I get a perfect selection, and I can extrude those. Now this is going to behave differently. Remember when we were extruding faces, it put a little blue line. That's the normal, it's called. It puts a little blue line and it says we're going that way. This won't do that anymore. So when I hit E, it just goes way, it goes wild. Okay, you got to be mindful of that. So if you're extruding edges or verts, the extrude tool behaves differently. So Control Z, go to the side view. I still want this geometry, so I'm going to use it. And G, move it into place, scale it, make it big. This guy down here needs to be scaled now just to make more sense visually. This one down here needs a little bit more of a scale. G move. Now I'm getting a little bit of a kneecap. That's cool. Kneecap's cool. All right. And this is starting to look all right. Get up in here, look at it from the front. G, move it in. These guys probably can all be S scaled a little bit. G moved. As we grab this edge loop here, now I'm looking at it from the front. I can just make a big extrude now and go up all the way into the dress. Cool beans. Look at it from the side, scale it up. If I wanted to round this, that's cool, we're good. We can just hit Control R, give ourselves another edge loop, hit S to scale it, G to move it, S to scale it, go to the side, take a look what's going on. Nice. Now, you might be thinking, all right, this is looking really bad. Well, let's look at it from non-X-ray view. Well, there's some work to do. I didn't necessarily want there to be kneecap all the way around, and that's fine. Because invariably what you're going to start doing is tweaking all of these verts, and that's why low poly is so awesome. Because it's not a big deal right now for me to go into edit mode, with verts, go U, and U on the other side. Don't forget, I can scale and bring those together. U and U, I can scale. Seems weird. Seems counterintuitive to use scale to do a move, but you think about it, you're scaling them together, so it kind of makes sense. Right? This is what we do. We tweak, 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 tweak. That's how we do. There's no getting around it. There's no getting around it. And whoops, I grabbed an edge loop. Escape. Click. U and U. Didn't mean to grab an edge loop there. Scale. Bring those together. Yeah. So, you know, you're going to eventually want to, you know, define things like a kneecap. It's like U and U. Don't forget, GG. We can slide that up. U and U. GG. We can slide you down. Start to make that rounder, etc. Do all the things we do. A whole edge loop, which is cool. Grab this whole edge loop and GG, slide it down if we wanted it further down the leg. Yeah. And all I'm trying to do right now is just sort of balance out all of my polys so they look really nicely distributed. As we get into more things, like if we wanted to make this bulge out here, I can say GG and slide you down. And then this set of faces here, 3, U, 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 and U, and U. I can inset it if I wanted to. And then I can G it on X, and I can slide it out. You know, this is how we add these little details in later. This might not work for me, but I'll just leave that there for now. Right? This is how we add the details. Cool. So now we're starting to get into this interesting problematic area here, which is the crotch. And you'll remember we're using this modifier. I'm going to jump back to object mode. We have this little thing under the wrench over here called the mirror modifier. And be mindful, you can always turn these on and off by clicking the little monitor button. If you want to turn off your modifiers, you can do that. But it's set to merge. What does that mean? What does merging mean? So eventually these verts that are really tight up into the into the axis where the mirroring is happening, we're going to want those verts to snap together, and like we tapped the M key before, we're going to want them to be two verts on either side of the mirror to become one. And that'll happen on the actual axis that it's mirroring on. And clipping's neat too. Clipping is really powerful. So for example, if I go into edit mode and I grab this vert here and I'm going to move it to the other side, well, it allows it to clip through to the other side. Escape. Clipping, when I turn this on, G, it's going to cause the vert to stop at the actual axis of mirroring, which is so handy. Thanks for that. And it's merged it. So I don't want you to do this at this point, but I'm just going to make a point here. I'm going to apply this modifier. Okay. Now, these two sides have become realized geometry. And because of the merging, when I select this vert and I look at my statistics, it's only one vertex. It's only one vert. Because of the fact that the mirror modifier was set to merge. The clipping makes sure that that geometry doesn't slide over to the other side by accident, which is a great thing. Yeah. So I'm going to do some sneaky stuff here. I would try to get moving along a little bit quicker. And I'm going to hide some of my mistakes behind this skirt, because it's round and making things like a buttocks is not easy. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try if you need one, but my character doesn't need that. So I'm going to try to avoid it as best as I can. First of all, I'm going to just undo things. Luckily, I changed my undo steps. So I'll show you a really powerful thing. Let's pretend you get to a point where you've rotated your stuff and moved all of your verts, and you really, really wish you could just squish them back down onto one level. Found this trick out years ago. If I select these verts, I want them all to just be level again. It's kind of a counterintuitive keystroke, but I'm going to scale it on Z0. So you see what the keys I just pushed? It was S, Z0. You can do this on X and Y as well. So I'll do that again. Escape. Select the verts or the edges, faces, scale Z0. And that's going to push them all down to be exactly on the same level. And that is a super powerful technique to really keep your stuff clean. Now down here, we needed to rotate things, but maybe up in here we don't. Maybe we want to reset things while we're moving into different areas. So sometimes that's just powerful to help you to clean up things and get them nice and flat again. A little power tip. All right. So I'm going to move this up to here. And then I'm going to do my sneaky sneak again. I'm going to think about the crotch area in here. I'm going to merge some verts. I'm going to grab this vertex. I'm going to move it over to here. Oops, whoa. Let's go into the other side because clipping was unchecked. Snap, snap, snap. Cool. Right? So now we've got this connected. If I do an edge loop select and I hit extrude, remember when I'm extruding an edge, it's going to be kind of wild. So if I tap Z, it'll force it to extrude on Z. Now we're kind of getting into a bit of a problem area here. These faces are getting created and we don't really need them inside here. So So as you're going along, you kind of want to think about how you can clean stuff up. Like, is this vert really needed? Are these edges actually needed? So if I grab these edges, X, and I dissolve them, dissolve those edges, and we're starting to clean up our geometry. But I just accidentally invented an n-gon here. So I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-sided poly. It's not good. So I'm going to actually X delete this edge, and you see what's happening now. This is a poly that's got 4 sides, and these ones that are coming up now, and now this entire interior is hollow, which is exactly what I want. So the crotches come up here, but now I've got some nice hollow space. So I'm going to undo that and try that again. So I'm going to select U, U, and U with the Shift key, X. Try just deleting the edges. There we go. As long as these are still merged, we should be okay. There. Now, when I hit Alt and click on that edge, it still gives me an edge loop that I can extrude on Z. Watch this move. Scale it out. Where's he going with this? And then I'm going to extrude this down. Oh, get it? And now might be the time to just reference the artwork. Absolutely reference the artwork. Yep. So I know for a fact they've got some problems already. Nothing I can't clean up. These guys here, I'm going to scale them. All y'all, I'm going to scale you in. Oh, guess what? I am not in X-ray mode. That's why I can't select the stuff behind. Scale them. G, move them like so. Yeah, so I want that leg to go inside skirt. Things are going a little bit wild and funky. That's okay. I can grab all these verts. I can scale Z0. Clean that up. You guys, scale Z0. Make sure what I've got going on still has good topo. Oh, it's all good. These guys. I might have, by accident, because I tapped the E key, created too many verts. So I'm going to double check. Verts 2 out of 219. So I'm going to select all. Merge by distance and just have that clean up what's going on. Now when I select, it's one vert. Cool. This is just responsible modeling. All right, so now I'm going to extrude this down to the shape of the skirt. Like so. I'm going to look at it from the front. I'm going to scale it. I'm going to rotate it. G. And once more, a lot of the detail can be added later. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We can grab all of these verts and move them around as need be. Let's see if we can't get this going here. This is the first time I've ever modeled this little lady, so I'm kind of figuring stuff out as I go. There we go. Pull that down. Now I can take this edge loop and I can extrude it on Z. Yeah, I can. G, I'm going to move it up here. I'm going to scale it down. This is going to become the outside of the skirt. Now the problem is this edge is hitting this edge here at a very, very sharp angle. So I'm definitely going to want what's called a supporting edge loop. I hit Control R and bring an edge loop down like so. And just give it a little scale like that. so that I get a little bump underneath there like that. Yeah. Yeah, that should do. Now there's tweaking, obviously. Gonna want to come around here and start pulling things down, but once more, you can get really fixated on what's happening here. So let's not do that. Let's grab this edge loop and move on. So I'm going to extrude it up like so. As long as I don't have any penetration, I should be okay. Penetration means that I'm accidentally getting inside of the object, and I don't want to do that. There's obviously some work to be done here. Pull you out like so. Again, like so. Yeah. Now, some folks out there right now might be like, oh boy, this is getting really wild where he's going with this. But don't forget, if you want to clean up anything at any point in time, just scale Z0. Flatten that back out again. Grab this guy, G on X. These two here, G on X. Get that shape that we want. These guys here, G on X. Now, moving these things around methodically by using these keystrokes ensures that stuff's moving in a predictable, meaningful manner. It's really important to think that way, right? Look at it with X-ray mode off. You're going to start to see issues like this up here. I'm going to take care of it now. So X, G on X. Look at her reference art. Make sure that's touching her back. This guy here. G on X, move it in. We got a nice flow. Nice flow. And you've always got your old friend Gigi, which will slide it like so. So we get some nice edge loops. G on X. We can probably GG this one. Once more, don't get too into the weeds with the minutia. We do have to move on here. Yeah. GX. Now there is a really cool plugin that I'm a huge fan of. It helps me out all the time. It's under edit preferences, get extensions. I have it turned on by default, I think. So loop tools, loop tools, loop tools, loop tools. Where are you? Are you hiding in add-ons? Add-ons. Loop. There you go. It's under add-ons. Oh, I wish this thing was almost on all the time. This is like Node Wrangler and Loop Tools are your best friends. But Loop Tools does cool stuff. Like if I grab this loop and I right click on it, you have new options at the top to like circularize that. Yay! Hooray! That's helpful. It's not a perfect circle, but now we can like scale on X, right? It's a helpful tool to just kind of reset stuff. Right click on this and see what it does. You can always undo it. Let's circularize that. Not working for me, but I'm going to S on X. It's helpful. That's not helpful right now, but in certain circumstances, it is very helpful. Yeah. So I'm going to just live with what I got right now and just keep moving on. Yeah. Extrude on Z. Yeah, I'm going to be kind of cheaty. I'm going to cheat. Extrude on Z. I'm going to extrude on Z. I'm going to scale it. It scales in every direction. You got to be mindful of that when you press scale. Now, if you wanted to only scale on Y, you it just SY. That will keep all your verts living on the same position they were X. But you're getting something into sort of funky topo mode here. It's not good, right? It's not good. So, like I said before, you really want to just keep moving along, because we can come back in here later and shape all of this stuff out, but I want to kind of get this finished so that I can start thinking about all of the specific detail and worrying about tweaking all them verts. Yeah. So this here, I'm going to extrude it up. EZ, literally, E and then Z key. Then I'm going to start thinking about the neck. I'm just going to be messy about it. Just scale it. No, I'm not going to scale it. Grab these guys. G on Y. Slide them over. So I'm not in X-ray mode, so be mindful of that. G on Y. Yeah. Maybe what I could have done a little bit to save myself a little bit of headache is worry about the armpit and the arms, but yeah. Now, when you're creating something that's cylindrical, like an arm, you want to be mindful of the shape that it's going to eventually become. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to slide this up like so. Grab this guy here, GG, slide it up. So these are all nice and balanced. And I know I'm going to be popping an arm out of these faces here. So you, and you are going to become an arm. So I can right click here, loop tools, and say circle. So powerful. And because they're still selected, I can G and I can move them around. And I'm looking at this in ISO mode, so yeah, I'm getting away with a lot here. Yeah. So that's the beginnings of an arm. And I am not going to go down the road of worrying about all the detail in the arm, but I can show you how we basically solve for this. So with the faces, I can grab you, and just like we got at the hips, I can X and get rid of these faces. Now this is going to become the foundation of my arm here. Just like before, extrude, rotate, extrude, rotate, and I'm building a lot of complexity around this shoulder here, and especially in and around the armpit, because this is going to deform a lot. Right? So G and R are the only tools. E, extrude, rotate, G. What I'm eventually going to try to do here is get this into position so that I could literally just extrude it almost straight down like this to that wrist right there. You see how this is all sort of coming together nice and smooth? Still a lot of work to do, but we're well on our way. There's a sneaky moment in here, just like the skirt. We can extrude this, rotate it to match the sleeve, scale it up. I'm going to extrude, scale, extrude, scale, and And then I'm going to G, move it up inside like so. And I'm going to extrude. Now you could use other tools. There's people are probably out there right now like, why aren't you using the inset, or why aren't you using something else? It's all up to the way you work, you know. Scale it inside. I extrude it down like so. Because I'm in ISO mode, I can pretty much trust that everything I just did is going to flow perfectly when I go back to this mode here. When I look at it with X-ray off. Yeah. So I think for today's tutorial, I'm going to end it here, because the next step is the head, and it's a whole other ball of fun. But I think for the moment, I'm satisfied with getting to where I am, and I'm going to stop my recording and then pick it up for another tutorial at another time. I hope all these little bits of Blender information were helpful for you all, and like I always say, put your love and your heart and your fun into it, and you'll read it at the end when your model's complete. So happy modeling, my friends. Peace.